morning. Welcome to Dying to Live.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you today.
I am equally excited to chat with you.
So maybe we'll start with, we have a little bit of history together, and I think it's really fun kind of where both of our journeys have taken us. But today, I really want to talk about your journey. And so kind of going back to how we know each other, we worked together at a large company for a couple of years. You came in as an intern, and then of course you earned a role or two, a couple different roles within the company. And I always enjoyed working with you, and you always had such bright, great ideas, and just an awesome human all around. And then you kind of went on this journey, and it was a pretty epic one. So I wanted to kind of start there, and maybe you could tell us about your journey, which started, I believe, in like 2014.
Yeah, I know. I was reflecting on this as well, and it is pretty wild, like how we know each other, and that I met you right after I graduated from college, and was an intern, and one of the things that really stood out to me about you was that even though we were very busy in what you were doing, you really helped us and like nurtured our team and gave us a lot of insight and advice, and so I felt like kinship with you even from that moment. So it's
Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's funny to like, wow, like you've known me since I had just graduated college, like up until now. And so, yeah, you're right. I had kind of like moved through a few different positions at the company that we worked through together. And none of them ever felt like quite right. And I felt like there was something else out there waiting for me. But I had no idea what it was. During the time that we worked together, I actually became a yoga teacher. So one of the things of like being an intern was that we, competed in this competition, and we all got $1,000 at the end, which is actually what I used to pay for my yoga teacher training.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that kind of sparked that journey. And then I also started teaching, our coworkers once a week, which was a funny thing to do. And it really made me see that I loved yoga. I loved what it was doing for other people, but I did not want to be a yoga teacher. I did not want to pursue that lifestyle. But I wanted more people to be able to, try on the things that I was trying on, and be able to do it in a way that was easier and more accessible than how I had found it.
Tell me for a minute, what attracted you to yoga in the first place? Like what was the spark that made you say, you know what, this is what's going to feed my soul right now?
Totally. I think for me, so I had kind of an untraditional upbringing, and I was homeschooled until high school. And that was one of the classes that I took was yoga. So we went to a co-op multiple times a week, and I kind of got to pick my own schedule and what I wanted to learn about and supplement my own education. And so one of those things was yoga. And I loved it. I remember being 12 and like crying on my mat and having like a really powerful experience and having no idea why or what was happening. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of my first experience with yoga. And then, it was something that I would do off and on throughout college, like as a Groupon. I had like no money to actually go to a studio. And so when I did have a job and an income, that was like the first thing that I knew I wanted to do was to join a studio. And at that age, it was like my therapy. It was how, excuse me, how I worked through like everything that was going on in my early 20s life. And also like it was hot yoga, I was trying to get a workout, I think a lot of people enter into yoga through that way. Mm-hmm. Of like, cool, I can work on like, my strength and my mind at the same time. And I didn't realize like also what it was doing for my spirit.
That's really beautiful. I love that that was part of your schooling from such an early age too, because gosh, how many other kids could benefit from that if it was offered, more widely in like a public school situation? That would be amazing. And I didn't know that you were homeschooled until high school. So what? Tell me about like entering high school then. Was that a shock to the system? Were you ready to be there? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was a very interesting experience. And I had like petitioned my parents to be able to go. I don't think they really had a plan for like if we were going to go to public school or not. I think they were anticipating that we would, homeschool all the way up until college. But I was like, I gotta have some friends. Like, I gotta have like a normal high school experience. So I went, and it was it was really difficult. I knew some people from, being in the community, but my interests and priorities, like I was a weird kid. I like studied like Socratic theory when I was homeschooled, and a lot of other weird subjects, and did, musical theater and like all those kinds of things. And so I didn't really fit in, but I tried really hard to. And so that is something I'm still like unwinding as an adult, is this ability to be a chameleon and blend in. Um, and the things that were important to me as a kid are even more important now. But I tried for a long time to like be normal, and have everyone else, think that I was normal too. So it
Wow.
was, yeah, definitely a shock, but that's kind of where I learned those skills of like how to acclimate and like relate to people, and blend in. And there's some of those things that do serve me now today, and still things I'm unwinding.
Yeah, I'm unwinding a little bit of that chameleon stuff myself. I think it's probably a lifelong work in progress in some ways.
Yeah.
But was there a point where you realized that actually the weird kids are the most interesting kids? Did that ever come up for you? Because that's what comes up for me when I hear, oh, Socratic theory and musical theater. That's a person I want to hang out with.
Totally. Yeah. I think honestly, it didn't really occur to me until like I was in college and even after college, because when I went to college, I joined a sorority again, like trying to acclimate and blend in and like and be part of a group. And I think what I've now realized as an adult is that I've been seeking a community, and those were the only forms of community that I knew how to find when I was growing up. Was, oh, the popular kids, or like a sorority, like those are like a built-in community, and those are the only structures that we really know. So I think, once I was in college, and I studied abroad, and I went and studied abroad in France twice, because I was just like, get me out of here. And that's when I realized that it was really valuable to have had a different experience and upbringing, because most of the other students that I was around and the people that I was meeting had different experiences, and upbringings, and that's what made them really interesting.
Yeah,
So,
I love that so much. I wish I could go back and tell, middle school aged Kristen that
mhm.
that there's not one way to be doing things, that there are lots of different types of people and ways to do things in the world, and exploring more of that is what's going to build a more enriched life in many ways. Um,
Mhm.
so I think that's beautiful that you kind of got the opportunity to see both sides of that.
Yeah, totally. Those two worlds, they don't quite make sense. But it's funny now, being in wellness, so many other people in the industry have like a similar life path, of not quite finding their place, trying to blend in, and then just like going out on their own and finding a bunch of people they do, resonate with. So,
Yeah, for sure. So that's probably a really good segue, because this whole journey of finding community. So, I've watched you for the past few years doing lots of things to what looks like connect, more deeply with your soul, championing your own mental health and mental health for others, and kind of consciously building your life. And you made a very drastic change in your life a few years ago and moved somewhere, and that kind of started a series of events for you. So I'd love to talk about that with you.
Yeah, totally. It's funny, looking back on it, because it totally was a big drastic shift, but at the time it just seemed like the logical next thing to do. And so what I ended up doing was I was not feeling, fulfilled in my job, and I knew I wanted to do something else, and envision a new life for myself. And I stumbled across a yoga internship in Medellin, Colombia. And right away, I knew that I was going to do that. And it was a month-long internship learning how to teach yoga in Spanish. And I did not know how to speak Spanish at all, but I've been wanting to learn. So I left and went down there, and the entire experience was really, really special. And all of the other teachers that I was with, they were also had ties to or were from the Pacific Northwest, which previous teachers had been, from all over the world. So there's something really special about our container. And then I spent another month and a half by myself, continuing to live there. And it was the first time that I truly experienced like the community that I was seeking, and like pure, like unstressed, unfettered joy, with every day of getting to be like, what do I want to do today? And that kind of experience is something I'm always seeking in the back of my mind, and because I know that it's possible.
Wow. The word that comes to mind when you say that is just how liberating that must have been.
Right. Totally. Liberation, I think, is the best word for that. And I think that's like all the work that I've been doing with my therapist as well, is like, it's always building towards freedom. And that's like all the things that we are removing and unpacking and moving through. It's with the goal of freedom in mind.
Yes. I love that so much. I sit with and think about that idea so much myself. How can I liberate myself from this or that? How can I have more freedom of time, of space, of ideation, of creativity? That is like my ultimate goal as well as a human.
Yes. Yeah. And it's so simple, and when you have that in your mind's eye, that's what you're marching towards, it can make a lot of the other stuff fall away.
Oh my gosh, so simple, and yet in a society where oftentimes we have things very prescribed to us, right? Like,
yeah,
you go to college, you get a job, you work for 20 or 30 years, you get married, you have a family. That's it. A lot of times that is the like US formula of how you're supposed to go from adolescence into adulthood. And it just, excuse me, doesn't have to be that way. There are lots of other paths and roads that we can take toward building, consciously the life that we want to have.
Yeah, totally. And also, reframing my definition of success, and that what does success look like? Again, something that is so prescribed, and that's really has been part of the journey too, of like, well, if I'm happy, and actually I was just talking about this with my therapist the other day, of having the goal at the end of the day be peace. Like, I can do that, I can do things throughout the day to tend to myself, to tend to the world around me, to end my day with peace. I might not be like happy, but like happy kind of seems like, something that is not really the goal these days anyways. So yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's a good time so the times that we are sitting in right now, do not have much peace. And on the one hand, that's due to COVID. And on the other hand, that's due to this way overdue and also continuing uprising in support of BIPOC folks who have been continuously held down and marginalized in so many ways. And, you know, that lack of peace is really beautiful to see in many ways as we all come together toward this common goal. But it's also a time then where self-care is even more important. So I wondered, you know, how are you tending to yourself in this time with all of this heaviness and unrest and uncertainty?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's something that is continuously evolving for me. And I think that's probably been the biggest thing that I've learned, is that our self-care practices never end. Our toolbox can always use more tools. And so the things that were helping me during, you know, when the pandemic was first unfolding are not the things that I'm leaning on right now. And also right now has the extra consciousness of, you know, self-care is super important, but like it has to extend outwards. Like community care is the goal. So how can I, you know, support myself in a way that I need, but that fuels me, gives me energy, still ignites me and initiates me to continue to show up for my community. And some of those tools have been like breath work. I hated breath work the first time I did it, but I love it. It scares the crap out of me every time. But it really feels like the practice of the times. So
I think some people still, when you say breath work, some people are still in the camp of, well, breath work, that sounds easy. Like I breathe all the time, until you've done it and you realize how intense it is, and how it can be just as transformative as something like a plant medicine journey or something like that. It's extremely powerful.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, it was great that I was working with my therapist during the time that I did my first breathwork session. And I told him afterwards, I was like, I don't think that's for me. Like that was too much, you know. I don't even know if it's safe, you know, just all of that stuff coming up. And then a few weeks later, he told me, he's like, you need to go back. It's like, I have noticed a profound shift for you in the way that you view things, and you should go do breathwork again ASAP.
Oh, wow. And so you've been back many times since then, probably.
No, I will be honest, I've been back once. So, which, you know, now that it's virtual, is a little bit easier, but, yeah, it's still like very scary. I'm still totally intimidated by it. But it is a major key to more healing.
Yeah,
So.
I'm curious about it too. And I've like I've done ayahuasca journeys like that. I'm scared of work, but that also means, I think oftentimes when we feel resistance like that, it means that this is a pathway that will open up something really big for you and offer up some pretty profound transformation. So I tend to lean into that resistance when it shows up instead of backing away from it.
Same here. Yeah. And that's definitely an area that I will probably keep on leaning into for a very long time.
Well, let's go back to Three Moon Collective, because in the spirit of community, you started Three Moon Collective. And I remember sitting with you at a little cafe in my neighborhood where you said, hey, I have this idea and I just want to run it by you. And I thought, when you told me about it, I thought, oh my gosh, this is something that's sorely needed. It's such a profound way to bring this information together and to rally a community around it. And like, I just love it. And I want to champion Hannah and what she's doing. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. And, you know, again, it's funny to look back and reflect on that moment. And so many moments during that time where I was having conversations with people about what I wanted to do. And most people were like, that's really ambitious, I'm like, yeah, it is. And it's still ever evolving. And so what I learned when I was in Medellin and had found this community was that the reason why I had such a powerful experience there and was able to connect not with only other travelers, but the Colombian people themselves was because of a resource. And it was a website and a weekly newsletter, and it was called Catalyst Weekly. And they informed everyone of what was going on in the city, and they had a directory of Spanish tutors and salsa teachers and chiropractors, etc. And it was all in English. So even though I didn't really speak Spanish yet, here was this amazing resource that had everything that I needed in order to access the city. And it wasn't just here's what all the expats are doing. Like, it was actually the events that the Colombian people were hosting, lots of language exchanges. So there was it felt to be part of the community. And so I started thinking that that's kind of what the wellness world needs. A lot of these terms, wellness can seem like a totally different language to someone who isn't familiar with it. And I really wanted to build that bridge between the people who were wellness curious and actually, helping them try on these practices, like go see a wellness provider and construct it in a way that felt really accessible and approachable to people.
Oh my gosh, so needed. And to be able to do that for a city like Seattle, where we have an abundance of wellness offerings here, but it can be really hard to explore and figure out what might be comfortable, accessible, and available, I guess, at any given time. So I love the way that Three Moon brings that together. And in addition, your newsletter, which is weekly, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Really educates on what these various practices are, the practitioners behind them, things that are going on in the community. And so it's a really holistic view of kind of the wellness in Seattle, which I love. But maybe you could help define for folks, what is meant by wellness in this sense. What are some of the practices that are offered that you communicate via Three Moon?
Yeah. And, for me, wellness is a very wide umbrella. And so it can be, anything from acupuncture to astrology, coaching, I'm blanking because there's so many things that fall under this umbrella. Sound baths, yeah, meditation, yoga. Basically, if it helps draw you closer to yourself or the people around you, then that's kind of wellness in my book. And the other thing that I've realized through doing this is that the wellness providers, the people who offer these services, they aren't gurus, they aren't, people who are like alone meditating in caves, they are just like you and I. And they have committed themselves to these practices, and they're really, really incredible at what they do. But we also have all of those same tools inside of us. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that I really believe in, is that everyone is their own healer. But we employ guides to help us learn how to heal ourselves in that way. And so that's kind of what I also seek to offer with providing these different practices and these recommendations of providers, is that people can become empowered seekers and empowered healers for themselves and the people around them. And I also find that a lot of people, once they start getting into wellness, then they want to be able to do it themselves too, and I think that's something that's really important to me, is that, no one is like gifted or chosen. In some ways, for some things, yes, like maybe you were born a little bit more open-minded. But a lot of these things can be taught and achieved, and as long as you practice. So that's what's really important to me too, is that you don't have to go do anything, super wild, in order to become a healer yourself. You just have to get into it.
Yeah. What strikes me about you is that what I'm hearing is that you've been an advocate for yourself for your whole life, whether it was, going after yoga in a bigger way because you knew it was something that was beneficial for you and worked for you, or, petitioning your parents to attend high school or quitting your job because it just wasn't working for your soul anymore, and going and having this amazing journey. And now you are enabling other people to be advocates for themselves in their own lives by equipping them with the information and the tools through Three Moons so that they can explore that for themselves. And that's beautiful, because once you because the best way to heal is actually to take that on yourself and become your own healer, as you were saying. So I think that is just really beautiful and much needed, and so excited that you're doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been really fun and also very difficult to explore. And something that I learned, I am doing all the different kinds of intuitive readings. I've had my natal chart read and my human design, and one of the things in my human design is that I am initiated by my own experiences. And I found that to be really true. So if I'm going through something in my life, whether it's my mental health or my hormonal health, that was also a journey for me, is that I need to speak to it, to storytell. And then that also gets wrapped into my greater purpose of why I'm here and what I'm doing.
Wow. I mean, that speaks volumes, I think, to your own healing journey, because to quote you from the Three Moon website, you have a quote that says, "I've spent a long time believing that who I am or what I have to say doesn't matter." But look at everything you have to say. There's so much, and you have the courage to work with that and sit with the discomfort of that, and then find the tools to use that to your advantage, and also to bring that healing power to others through empowerment.
Yeah, totally. No, it's funny to hear that reflected. And I think having to learn that we all have our own style, our own voice, and mine is a quieter one. It's a quieter strength. And I've been able to connect with so many more people through embracing my own voice and my own style of communication. And I think, we see, or we're taught that it has to be this one way. Like you have to, fake it till you make it. And you have to be the authority or else people aren't going to believe you. And all of that old system is falling away. So, yes. And it's making room for, exactly. It's making room for other people like us, who have a lot to say, but maybe are saying it in a different way, to step forward.
When I was in high school, I was on the cheerleading team, and there were a lot of very big personalities, and I did not have a big personality at that point. But I definitely had kind of a way of leading that was quieter. And I will never forget my cheerleading coach, calling that out at one point and calling me kind of a silent leader. And that was the first time when I'd heard a quieter personality be celebrated in that way and recognized for that. And it made such a profound difference in my own life to realize that was just as valuable as all of the loud voices that were out there.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I had a similar experience during my internship too, when my mentor said she noticed that I was kind of, staying, like leaning back. And she said that she felt like I was like the dark horse of our group, and just really encouraged me to speak up and, to have my voice heard. And that was a really pivotal moment for me. And I send her thanks now for being able to speak that when I needed to hear it.
So great. Things come to us when we need them the most, I think. That's beautiful.
Yes.
So what advice do you have for the seekers, those who are looking to nurture a gentler inner voice, who want more connection and more meaningful connection and more fulfillment in their lives? What would you tell those folks?
I think one understanding that's been pivotal for me is that the seeking never stops. Yeah. And I wish that it did. I wish that we would just find the things that, like, okay, these work for me, and that's it. I'm good now. But that's not true. So having that knowledge that the seeking never stops, I think is important to understand, because it's part of the journey, and not a reason to get discouraged, but instead excited about how much more we can learn and expand and add. And the other piece of advice I would give is to start somewhere with speaking. For me, it began with journaling. That was where I got to home base, and then social media, that can be a tool too, and that was where I started exploring sharing that as well, and then finally my newsletter, where I had to show up consistently every week, to write and address my community, and really channel what I was feeling and what I wanted to say. So I think those are the things that I would recommend. And the thing that I have realized now, during this moment when it's time to amplify Black, Indigenous, and people of color, is that having a voice doesn't mean, being the loudest. I think that a lot of us, we've felt, suppressed for so long, and that now we're like, wait, but I have a voice, like I want to use it. And it's like, yes, that's true, but also to amplify the voices of others, and to speak alongside each other, or step back to allow other people to come forward. That doesn't mean that you are shutting down your own voice, but it's just that a chorus is much stronger together. So that's also been something really important, that as people come into their own voices, as I did, where you're like, wait, I was just getting started, to take a beat and see what we can do collectively.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Now is our time to help amplify other voices, and in so doing that, we use our own voice in a really productive and constructive way for the whole society.
Yeah, absolutely.